Does it talk? Or does it just drool? The voice was high, sharp, and bored. Skylar took a long drag from her cigarette, blowing the smoke directly toward the wheelchair. She stood in the center of the wet asphalt like she owned it, flanked by 4 young men who looked like they were waiting for permission to bite. Leo, 20 years old, felt the cold dampness of the parking lot seep into his shirt, but the heat rising in his chest was hotter. He gripped the metal rims of his chair. He was trapped. Behind him, the rear bumper of his sister's sedan blocked his retreat. In front of him, the exit was blocked by a wall of varsity jackets and cruel smiles. "Let's go, Leo," Chloe whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle of his chair. "Don't look at them. Just get in the car." Chloe was 24, a nurse who spent her days caring for people who couldn't care for themselves. She was tough, but she wasn't violent. And right now, staring at 5 18-year-olds who smelled like cheap beer and aggression, she was terrified. "I'm not going anywhere," Leo said. His voice was deep and steady, surprising even himself. He looked up, past the smoke, locking eyes with Skylar. "And I don't drool. But you seem to have a problem hearing, since I asked you to move 3 times. The silence that followed was brittle. The ambient hum of the highway seemed to vanish. Skylar's eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to resistance. She was used to fear. She flicked the ash from her cigarette onto Leo's lap. "Did you hear that, Brad?" Skylar asked, not looking away from Leo. "I think the speed bump has an attitude." Brad, the largest of the group, stepped forward. He was 6'2", built like a linebacker, with a face that suggested he hadn't had an original thought in years. He grinned, jamming the toe of his heavy boot against the front caster of Leo's wheelchair. The chair jolted hard. "You got a problem, Wheels?" Brad sneered, leaning down. "You think because you're sitting in that chair you get a free pass to talk back to her?" "I think I'm a human being trying to get dinner with my sister," Leo snapped back. "And I think you're a coward who needs a girl to tell him when to breathe." Chloe gasped. "Leo, stop!" But it was too late. The insult landed. Brad's face turned a mottled shade of red. The other 3 guys, a lanky blonde kid and 2 followers in hoodies, chuckled nervously, but stopped when Skylar held up a hand. Skylar smiled. It was a cold, reptilian expression. "He thinks he's tough," she said softly. "That's cute. Brad, maybe he needs a new perspective. How about we see how he looks on the ground?" "No!" Chloe screamed. She threw herself between Brad and the chair, her hands raised. "Please, just let us leave! We're leaving right now!" "You're not going anywhere until we say you can," Skylar said, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Teach him a lesson, Brad. Tip it." Brad reached out, grabbing the handles of the wheelchair over Chloe's shoulder. Chloe clawed at his arm, desperate. "Get off him!" she shrieked. Brad simply shoved her. He didn't even look at her. He swept his arm back, and Chloe went flying. She stumbled on the slick oil of the parking lot, crying out as her hips slammed against the side of her car. She slid down to the wet pavement, gasping for air. "Chloe!" Leo yelled, struggling to turn the chair, but Brad had a firm grip on the back. Brad laughed, a low rumble. He tilted the chair back onto 2 wheels. Leo's hands scrambled for purchase, his center of gravity gone. The world tilted dangerously. 1 more inch, and he would go crashing backward onto the unforgiving concrete. "Say you're sorry," Brad taunted. "Say I'm a little loser, and maybe I won't dump you." "Go to hell," Leo spat. Brad's grin vanished. "Have a nice trip." He prepared to shove. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." The voice came from the shadows beyond the street lamp. It wasn't shouting. It was calm, almost bored. Everyone froze. Brad paused, holding the chair precariously on its balance point. They all turned. Emerging from the darkness near a battered pickup truck was a man. He didn't look like a hero. He looked like he had been dragged through a 12-hour shift at a mechanic's shop. He was wearing a grease-stained jacket, jeans that were worn white at the knees, and boots caked in mud. He held a small, pink backpack in one hand, and the hand of a 6-year-old girl in the other. Jack stopped about 15 feet away. He looked tired. His eyes were dark, heavy with exhaustion, but they were fixed on Brad's hands. "Walk away," Jack said simply, "while you still can." Skylar scoffed, loud and harsh. She looked Jack up and down, taking in the cheap clothes, the fatigue, the little girl hiding behind his leg. Excuse me? Skylar laughed, looking at her friends. Is this a joke? Who invited the janitor? Jack ignored her. He crouched down, ignoring the threat for a split second to tend to what mattered. He looked at his daughter, Lily. Lily, sweetie, Jack whispered, his voice softening instantly. Go get in the truck, lock the door, put your headphones on. But Daddy, the little girl whimpered, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Do it now, baby. I'll be right there. Lily hesitated, looked at the scary man holding the wheelchair, then ran to the truck. The sound of the heavy door slamming and the lock clicking echoed in the silence. Jack stood up slowly. He rolled his neck, a sickening crack popping in the quiet air. He turned back to the group. I'm going to ask you one more time, Jack said, his voice flat. Let go of the chair. Let the lady up. And get out of here. Or what? The blonde kid challenged, stepping forward to stand next to Brad. What are you gonna do, old man? There's 5 of us. You're alone. Yeah, Brad added, still holding the chair. You better get back in your truck and drive away before you get hurt, Pops. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me when I see a bunch of kids bullying a man who can't stand up to fight them, Jack said. He took a step forward. Just one. But the movement was fluid. Controlled. Skylar stepped in front of Jack, blocking his path. She was fearless in her ignorance. She poked a manicured finger into Jack's chest. You don't tell us what to do, Skylar hissed. Do you know who my father is? I could buy your truck and burn it just for fun. Now get lost before I have my friends teach you some manners. Jack looked down at the finger poking his chest. He looked at Skylar's face. He saw the cruelty there, the absolute lack of empathy. I don't care who your father is, Jack said quietly. But he failed you. Get him! Skylar shrieked, stepping back. Brad! Tyler! Mess him up! Brad finally let go of the wheelchair, dropping it back down on all 4 wheels with a jarring thud that shook Leo's bones, and turned his massive frame toward Jack. He cracked his knuckles, a wide, excited grin spreading across his face. All right, Brad said, bouncing on the balls of his feet. I was getting bored anyway. Chloe, still on the ground, watched in horror. Sir, please, don't, she cried out. They'll hurt you. Just call the police. Jack didn't look at Chloe. He didn't reach for a phone. He just stood there, hands loosely at his sides, watching Brad approach. He looked incredibly small compared to the varsity athlete. Last chance, Jack said. Shut up! Brad yelled. He lunged forward, cocking his right fist back for a haymaker that would take Jack's head off. The punch flew through the air. The world seemed to slow down. Chloe closed her eyes, unable to watch the stranger get beaten for them. Skylar smirked, waiting for the sound of bone hitting bone. Before we see if karma finally strikes. If you believe that bullies deserve to be taught a lesson, hit that like button right now. It helps us share this message. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from today? To Chloe, watching through the slits of her fingers, and to Skylar, watching with a cruel smirk, it looked like magic. 1 second, Jack was standing there, a tired mechanic waiting to be crushed. The next, he was gone. Jack didn't duck. He stepped in. He moved inside the arc of Brad's swinging arm, his body moving with a fluid, terrifying economy of motion that no barroom brawler possessed. Jack's left forearm snapped up, not just blocking Brad's arm, but deflecting it upward, exposing the big man's ribs. In the same heartbeat, Jack's right fist drove forward. It wasn't a wild swing. It was a short, brutal piston strike directly into Brad's liver. Thwack. The sound was wet and sickening, like a butcher slamming a slab of meat onto a counter. Brad's eyes bulged so wide the whites showed all around. His mouth opened in a silent scream, the air paralyzed in his lungs. His nervous system simply shut down. The giant linebacker folded in half, his knees hitting the wet asphalt first, followed by his face. He curled into a fetal ball, wheezing, clutching his side, completely neutralized. The parking lot fell into a stunned, heavy silence. The rain seemed to get louder. What? The blonde kid, Tyler, took a stumbling step back, his brain unable to process how their strongest fighter had just been dropped by a single punch. Jack stood over Brad's groaning form. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He adjusted his cuff, his face expressionless. He looked up at the remaining 3 boys. You have 3 seconds, Jack said. His voice was no longer tired. It was cold steel. 1. Get him! Skylar screamed, her voice cracking with panic. There's 3 of you. Rush him! Tyler and the 2 guys in hoodies looked at each other, then at Skylar, and made a bad choice. Motivated by pride and the fear of looking weak in front of a girl, they charged. It was a chaotic, sloppy rush. Tyler swung a wild kick at Jack's legs while the other 2 tried to grab his jacket. Jack didn't retreat. He pivoted on his heel, grabbing the fabric of the hoodie of the first attacker. He used the boy's own forward momentum, spinning him around and driving him shoulder first into the side panel of the pickup truck. The metal groaned and dented inward. The boy slid down the tire, dazed. Tyler tried to tackle Jack from the side. Jack didn't even look. He caught Tyler's wrist, twisted it sharply behind the boy's back, and kicked the back of his knee. Tyler collapsed to the ground, screaming as the pressure on his shoulder joint became unbearable. Stay down, Jack commanded, leaning his weight onto Tyler's back for a fraction of a second to ensure compliance. The last boy, seeing his friends decimated in under 10 seconds, stopped dead in his tracks. He looked at Jack, then at the open space behind him. He raised his hands, shaking his head rapidly. I didn't do anything, he stammered. I'm leaving! I'm leaving! Take them with you, Jack said, gesturing to the groaning pile of bodies. The boys scrambled to help Tyler up. They grabbed the dazed guy by the truck. They didn't even look at Brad, who was still gasping on the ground. They turned and ran, disappearing around the corner of the diner, abandoning the fight, the honor, and most importantly, their leader. That left Skylar. The silence that returned to the parking lot was different now. It wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of judgment. Skylar stood alone in the center of the wet asphalt. Her expensive boots were soaked. Her cigarette lay disintegrated in a puddle. She looked around wildly, her head whipping left and right, looking for her muscle. But the muscle was gone. She looked at Jack. For the first time, genuine terror filled her eyes. She saw the way he stood. Still, calm, lethal. She took a stumbling step backward, her hands coming up to cover her face. Don't, she whimpered. My dad is a lawyer. You can't touch me. Jack looked at her. His gaze was heavy, but there was no violence in it toward her. He wasn't a monster. He didn't hit women. He didn't hit children. To him, she was both. He didn't say a word to her. He simply turned his back. He dismissed her completely, as if she were no more important than the rain falling on his coat. He walked over to Leo, crouching down to check the wheels of the chair. You okay, son? Jack asked, his voice returning to that gentle, fatherly tone. Skylar blinked. She was safe. The monster had turned away. A slow, trembling relief washed over her, instantly replaced by a surge of her old entitlement. She straightened up. She opened her mouth to yell something, an insult, a threat, something to regain her dignity. Hey! The voice didn't come from Jack. It came from the ground near the sedan. Chloe pulled herself up. Her hip throbbed where she had hit the car, and her scrubs were soaked with oily water. But she wasn't crying anymore. She wiped the hair from her face, revealing eyes that were burning with a protective, furious fire. Chloe walked past Jack. She walked past Leo. She walked straight toward Skylar. Skylar froze. She looked at Chloe, and she laughed, a nervous, shaky sound. What are you going to do? You're a nurse. You help people. Chloe stopped 2 feet from Skylar. She stood tall, her posture radiating a strength she didn't know she had until this moment. I help people who deserve it, Chloe said, her voice low and dangerous. She took another step, invading Skylar's personal space. Look around, Skylar. Your boys are gone. Your dad isn't here. Chloe leaned in, her eyes locking onto Skylar's. Now, without your henchmen, it's just you and me, Chloe whispered. I want to see if you have that same courage now. Skylar's face twisted. Instinct took over. She lashed out, swinging her hand in a desperate slap aimed at Chloe's face. Chloe was ready. She didn't use military tactics. She used the reflexes of a woman who had spent years catching falling patients and reacting to emergencies. She caught Skylar's wrist in midair. Her grip was iron. Let go of me! Skylar shrieked, struggling. You like to hurt people who can't fight back, Chloe said. You like to watch. Chloe twisted Skylar's arm down, forcing the girl to bend her knees. Then, with her free hand, Chloe delivered a sharp, stinging slap across Skylar's cheek. Crack! It wasn't a beatdown. It was a correction. It was the sound of reality crashing into a lifetime of privilege. Skylar gasped, clutching her burning cheek. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes. She looked at Chloe with shock, as if the concept of consequences was an alien language she was hearing for the first time. "Get out," Chloe said, pointing toward the road. "Go home, and if I ever see you near my brother again, I won't just slap you. I will end you." Skylar didn't argue. She didn't threaten. The illusion of her power had evaporated. She turned and ran, her boots skidding on the wet pavement, sobbing loudly as she chased after the friends who had left her behind. The parking lot was finally, truly quiet. Brad, still on the ground, curled into a ball, wheezing painfully. Chloe looked down at him, her nurse's instinct flickering for a split second despite her anger. Jack noticed her hesitation. He stepped over Brad calmly. "He'll be fine," Jack said, his voice flat. "He just needs to learn how to breathe again." Jack walked toward the pickup truck. "Lily?" Jack called out softly. "It's safe now, baby." The truck door opened. The little girl jumped out, still clutching her rabbit, and ran into Jack's arms. He scooped her up, burying his face in her hair for a second, grounding himself. Chloe leaned against the car, the adrenaline dump making her knees weak. She looked at Leo. He was pale, but he was grinning. "Did you see that?" Leo breathed, looking at Jack. "He moved like a movie." Jack walked back over to them, carrying Lily. He looked different now. The lethality was gone, replaced by a shy, almost awkward demeanor. He looked at Chloe, noticing the dirt on her scrubs. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" Jack asked. "I'm sorry I didn't step in sooner. I was trying to get them to walk away." Chloe looked at him. She saw the kindness in his eyes. She saw the way he held his daughter. Her heart, still hammering from the fight, skipped a strange beat. "You saved us," Chloe said, her voice trembling. Thank you. I don't know what they would have done. They were just bullies," Jack said, looking down at his boots. "Bullies don't know what to do when someone pushes back." Leo rolled his chair forward. He extended a hand toward Jack. "I'm Leo," he said firmly, "and that was the coolest thing I've ever seen." Jack smiled, shifting Lily to his left hip so he could shake Leo's hand. He didn't shake it gently like some people did when they met a guy in a chair. He gave a firm, man-to-man handshake. "I'm Jack. This is Lily." "I'm Chloe," she said, stepping forward. She hesitated, then gestured toward the neon sign of Tucker's Diner buzzing above them. "Jack, let us buy you dinner. Please. It's the least we can do. And I think we all need to get out of the rain." Jack hesitated. He looked at his dirty clothes. He looked at his truck. "I don't want to impose. We were just going to grab a burger to go." "Please," Chloe insisted, offering a warm, genuine smile that lit up the gloomy parking lot. "My treat. Besides, I think Lily looks hungry." Lily nodded vigorously against Jack's shoulder. "I want pancakes!" Jack chuckled, the sound deep and warm. "Well, I guess you can't argue with pancakes." They walked toward the diner entrance together. The transition from the cold, hostile parking lot into the diner was like stepping into another world. The air smelled of roasting coffee, bacon, and maple syrup. The warmth wrapped around them instantly. The diner was mostly empty, just a few truckers at the counter and an elderly couple in the corner. They chose a large booth near the window. Jack set Lily down, and she immediately started coloring on the paper placemat. Chloe sat across from Jack, with Leo at the head of the table. Under the warm yellow lights, Chloe finally got a good look at him. He was handsome, in a rugged, broken-in sort of way. He had a small scar above his eyebrow and lines of worry around his eyes, but his smile when he looked at his daughter was beautiful. "So," Leo said, breaking the silence as they opened the menus, "you have to tell me, where did you learn to hit a guy like that? You're not just a mechanic, are you?" Jack stiffened slightly. He picked up his glass of water, taking a long sip. He looked at Chloe, then at Leo. He saw no judgment, only curiosity and gratitude. "I was a mechanic," Jack said quietly. "In the Army, Ranger Battalion. I spent 10 years fixing trucks, and Other things. Other things? Chloe asked softly. Sometimes things break in bad places, Jack said, his eyes unfocusing for a moment. And sometimes you have to fight your way out to fix them. He looked down at his hands that had just dismantled 3 men, now gently helping his daughter open a packet of crayons. But I'm done with that, Jack added quickly, looking at Chloe. I'm just a dad now. Just Jack. Chloe watched him. She saw the sadness he carried, the weight of a single father trying to protect his world. She felt a pull toward him that frightened her a little. Well, just Jack, Chloe said, her voice warm. We're very glad you were here. The waitress arrived, a pot of coffee in hand. What can I get you folks? You look like a family celebrating something. The table went silent. Chloe blushed, her cheeks turning pink. Jack cleared his throat, looking awkward but not displeased. Just dinner, Jack said, but his eyes lingered on Chloe for a second too long. Just dinner with friends. Quick question before we continue. Do you think Jack did the right thing by fighting back? Or should he have just called the police and waited? Type hero if you're on Jack's side, or too far if you think violence is never the answer. I want to see what you think. The threat of violence outside felt a million miles away, locked out behind the rain-streaked windows. Jack sat awkwardly in the booth. He was a man who knew how to dismantle an enemy squad in under 30 seconds, but figuring out what to do with his hands while sitting across from a beautiful woman. That was terrifying. He kept wiping them on his jeans, conscious of the grease stains, conscious of the fact that he was just a mechanic sitting across from a nurse. Lily was the bridge. She sat between them, happily dissecting a stack of pancakes that was bigger than her head. So, Leo said, breaking the silence. He had regained his color. He looked at Jack with a mixture of hero worship and curiosity. You said you were a ranger. How long have you been out? 4 years, Jack said, his voice low. He cut a piece of sausage for Lily. Since Lil's mom got sick. The table went quiet. It was a heavy silence, but not an uncomfortable one. It was the kind of silence that invited truth. Chloe set her coffee cup down gently. Is that just the two of you now? Jack nodded. He didn't look up. He looked at his daughter, watching her chew with a fierceness that made him smile sadly. Yeah, Jack said. Sarah, my wife, she passed when Lily was 2. Cancer. It wasn't a fight I could win. No matter how many push-ups I did or how many bad guys I stopped. I just had to watch. He took a breath, looking up at Chloe. For the first time, the soldier mask slipped completely. After that, I put the uniform away, Jack continued. I needed to be a dad more than I needed to be a sergeant. So now I fix trucks. It's quiet. It pays the bills. And I get to pick her up from school every day. Chloe felt a tightening in her chest. She looked at this man. Scuffed knuckles, dirty clothes, tired eyes. And she didn't see a project. She saw a man who had carried the world on his shoulders and never complained. You're doing a good job, Chloe said softly. Look at her. She's happy. She feels safe. Jack looked at Chloe. Really looked at her. He saw the kindness in her eyes, the same protective fire he had seen in the parking lot when she slapped Skylar. He felt a spark he hadn't felt in 4 years. It scared him. You guys are tough too, Jack deflected, pointing his fork at Leo. Most people would have kept their heads down. You stood up to them. Leo laughed, a dry sound. Well, my legs don't work, so my mouth has to do double duty. But Chloe, she's the real bodyguard. You saw that slap? Jack grinned. It transformed his face, taking 10 years off his age. I did. That was excellent form. Good wrist snap. They laughed together. The tension broke. For the next hour, they weren't strangers who met in a brawl. They were just people. They talked about Leo's college classes in graphic design. They talked about the terrible hospital cafeteria food Chloe had to eat. They talked about Lily's obsession with rabbits. But all good things have a timer. The waitress came by with the check. Jack reached for his wallet immediately. I got it. No, Chloe said, snatching the paper slip before he could touch it. Her eyes were playful but firm. I said my treat. You saved my brother from a beating. This is the cheapest bodyguard fee I've ever paid. Jack hesitated, his pride warring with his gratitude. He nodded slowly. Thank you, Chloe. They walked out of the diner together. The rain had stopped. The air was crisp and clean, the smell of wet pavement replacing the humidity. The parking lot, which had been a war zone an hour ago, was just a parking lot again. They reached Chloe's sedan. Jack's battered pickup truck was parked 2 spots over. This was the moment. The goodbye. Jack put Lily in her car seat, buckling her in and handing her the stuffed rabbit. He closed the truck door and walked back to where Chloe and Leo were waiting. He stood there, shifting his weight from foot to foot. He rubbed the back of his neck. He looked at his boots. Well, Jack said, I guess we'll get going. Don't want to keep her up too late. Right, Chloe said. She wrapped her arms around herself against the chill. She didn't want him to leave. Drive safe, Jack. Jack turned to go. He took 2 steps toward his truck. Then, he stopped. He took a deep breath. He looked up at the sky, as if asking the universe for just one more ounce of courage. Courage that was harder to summon than the courage to fight 5 men. He turned back around. He walked straight up to Leo. Leo, Jack said seriously, I need to ask you something, man to man. Leo blinked, surprised. Yeah? What's up? I'd like to ask your sister out to dinner, Jack said, his voice steady but his hands trembling slightly at his sides. Not as a thank you for saving us, and not for pancakes. A real date. But I know you guys are a team. So, I'm asking you if that's all right. Chloe's eyes went wide. Her breath hitched. Leo looked at Jack. He looked at the man who had defended him without hesitation. The man who treated him with dignity. The man who was currently sweating bullets asking for permission. Leo smiled. Jack, if you don't ask her out, I'm going to slash your tires. Jack let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for 10 minutes. He turned to Chloe. So, Jack said, his voice dropping an octave, soft and intimate. Chloe, would you like to maybe do this again? Without the wrestling match in the parking lot? Chloe smiled. It was a radiant, beautiful smile that chased away the last of the night's shadows. I'd love that, Jack, she said. But you have to promise to wear that mechanic's jacket. It's kind of working for you. Jack laughed, a sound of pure relief. I think I can manage that. He pulled a Sharpie from his pocket, a habit from the shop, and wrote his number on a napkin he had shoved in his pocket earlier. He handed it to her. Their fingers brushed. The electricity was undeniable. Call me, Jack said, or text. Whatever people do now. I will, Chloe promised. Jack walked back to his truck. He opened the driver's side door and climbed in. Inside the cab, Lily was waiting. She had been watching through the window. She looked at her dad, then she looked out the window at Chloe, who was waving. Daddy? Lily asked, her voice small. Yeah, Bug? Jack started the engine. Is that lady nice? Jack looked in the rearview mirror at Chloe, who was helping Leo into the car. Yeah, Lil. She's very nice. Lily hugged her rabbit tight. She looked down at its floppy ears. Mommy was nice too, Lily whispered. But I think it's okay if we have a new friend. I think Mommy would like her. Jack felt a lump form in his throat, thick and painful. But it was a good pain. It was the pain of healing. He reached back and squeezed his daughter's knee. I think you're right, baby, Jack whispered. I think she would. As Jack pulled the truck out of the parking lot, his headlights cutting through the dark, he looked in the side mirror one last time. Chloe was standing there, watching him go. The night had started with violence. It had started with cruelty and the worst of humanity. But it was ending with hope. The bullies had learned a lesson about pain. But Jack had learned a lesson about life. He learned that sometimes the strongest thing a soldier can do isn't to fight. It's to open his heart again. As the truck merged onto the highway, leaving the diner behind, Jack turned on the radio. For the first time in 4 years, he wasn't just driving to get through the day, he was driving toward a future, and he couldn't wait for his phone to ring. If you made it this far, I want to know who the real loyal fans are. Comment the word "ring" down below, because I have a feeling Jack might be needing one for Chloe very soon. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And if you loved this one, you are going to absolutely love the video on your screen right now. Click it, and I'll see you there.